Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hey, we're going to start in just another minute. We're just going to give everybody another minute or so to get on the line before we get started. So be patient. We'll be right back. Looks like the count of new people joining has started to slow down. So this is probably a good time for us to jump in. We want to keep this session to 30 minutes, so let's not waste a minute. Kelly, John, you guys ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, awesome. Thanks everybody for joining. We really appreciate you getting on the line to join us for this conversation this morning. We are coming to you live from our living rooms, dens, and home offices, and all the places you guys are likely joining us from. I think obviously what we're facing right now is an unprecedented situation. And in order for businesses like yours and businesses like ours to survive, requires a lot of collaboration and a lot of creative thinking. We had to do a bit of adaptation last week when we were scheduling the session. Actually, we were just about to push the button on an invite when we learned that our preferred webinar platform was like going down daily. So we're experimenting with a new platform that we're really happy with so far. So anyway, just want everyone to understand this is a time where we all have to adapt to situations that we've never experienced before. What we're learning through conversations with our clients is that some businesses are doing particularly well. You know, we're in an enviable position. We get to work with thousands of retailers across the country. And in fact, as Kelly will describe, just during this past week alone, we've had conversations with literally hundreds of them. And so what we wanted to do, we thought we're in this enviable position where we get to interact with so many businesses like yours. We thought we could share the collective learning and invite you all to participate in the conversation, do it as a weekly conversation, and learn as we go and share all the good thinking and ideas that everyone is coming up with. So we'll host this session every week for 30 minutes on a Tuesday. Particulars, it's going to feel a lot like a webinar, although we're meaning for this to be more like a conversation than a webinar. But we are using a webinar platform, which means we can't hear you. You can interact with us by submitting questions to the question box at any time you want. We'll get to those as opportunity permits, and we've saved time at the end of the agenda to get through as many of them as possible. So, John, if you want to go, we're on the speaker slide. So for today's first meeting, we've got a couple of people to host the conversation. John Kelly, who's the CEO here at ZenReach, and Kelly Delana, who runs our customer success organization. John has the wisdom and experience of having worked at a couple of big digital advertising companies through significant downturns, both the dot-com bust in 2000, 2001, as well as the mortgage meltdown in 2008, 2009. So he's got a lot of practical experience and wisdom to share. And Kelly, as I explained, runs our customer success organization. She's been having a lot of customer conversations recently, but also comes to her role as an operator, having run digital marketing for a retail pool supply business. So a couple of really capable, experienced people to guide us through this conversation. What I want to do at this point is turn it over to them. The agenda, if we take a quick look, we're going to talk through what we're seeing in retail traffic patterns in our client organizations, and then we'll talk through some of the specific experiences our customers are having and some of the adjustments that they're making to run successful businesses. So let me turn it over to you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, and I'm glad that you've already indicated how old I am by having gone through the dot-com boom and bust. So first of all, welcome to everybody. Clients, we really appreciate your business. And if there are people that aren't yet familiar with ZenReach, really briefly, we leverage in-store Wi-Fi as a sensor for determining traffic. Not only traffic patterns, but people who are coming in. We create a guest Wi-Fi so we can capture a lot of details about them. And we're deployed across more than 8,000 locations across North America. And we're here today from this data set to present to you some of the findings that we have. One of the first things I want to walk through is kind of what we're seeing in terms of traffic. What are the walk-ins? What does the in-store traffic look like nationally? And so far in 2020, we were having a really good year. Traffic across our merchants was up 6%, very strong traffic. It was very good engagement. The economy was doing really well. And for the most part, we were looking at record numbers across our client base. We did start to see declines at the beginning of March, slight declines at the beginning of March, and then about March 6th is when the steeper decline started to kick in. And currently, as of yesterday, we saw traffic was down almost 60% across our merchant base across the country. That's a significant decline. Let's not sugarcoat it. That is a really big blow to in-store businesses. Today, what we really want to concentrate on as we talk about kind of some of the things that we're seeing is we're going to look at a little bit of a regional aspect, and then we're going to dive into some verticals. We're going to concentrate primarily on food and beverage today. We've got clients across the spectrum from retail to event spaces, but today's really going to concentrate on food and beverage because that is the industry that's been hit really most dramatically. Okay, so nationally, as we said, traffic's down almost 60%. That's a big blow. San Francisco, I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. Traffic decline started earlier than normal. We saw the first cases of COVID virus in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were probably the second region, I think, after Seattle. So we did see declines start earlier. Those declines started about March 5th and have currently led to about 58% drop in in-store traffic. So the declines have been steep, but started a little earlier in the Bay Area. Same is mostly true for New York. New York, though, started a little bit later in San Francisco. The declines really start about March 9th, and their in-store traffic is down now 61%. So New York is feeling it. You compare this, though, to a city like New Orleans, where, as you know, Mardi Gras took place, and I think that was on March 5th. They were still partying all the way past Mardi Gras. They had not yet had COVID virus cases at that time, and so the partying was going on really, really well there, but they too have been impacted, and that really started on about the 14th, and their in-store traffic is now down 71% from the peak. So big declines even in locales like New Orleans. If we break the traffic patterns down by vertical, so looking at restaurants, bars, and nightclubs, again, having a banner year, traffic was up, really significant. Businesses was doing well across the board. But nationally, it started to fall about the 13th, and across the board, it's down about 60%, in line with the kind of national traffic patterns. Break this down further by coffee shops, bakeries, and dessert shops. Their decline was less sharp. It actually held up a little bit better through the beginning part of March, but again, they're hitting, it's getting hit pretty dramatically there as well. So 60% decrease in traffic patterns. Okay, so that's what we're seeing globally. So if you, as a retailer, as a restaurateur, as a bar or nightclub owner are experiencing this, you're experiencing the same thing that most of us are, right? Steep declines in traffic patterns. However, what I would say is, one, all is not lost. There's some really good things that are going on, and we're going to share some of the best practices that we've seen from our merchant base. But also, I would say, as Mike pointed out, somebody who's lived through these crises before will get through it. It might be difficult for another month, 2, 3 months, who knows? But those of us who can get through this period almost always come out stronger. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of some of the ways you can get through the period. So with that, I want to turn it over to Kelly, who's been in constant contact with our client base. And Kelly, what are you hearing?
Yeah, thanks so much, John. Really, you know, the way I would describe it the best would be we've got 2 different subsets of clients right now. We have some clients that as news has come out, they are choosing to shutter their doors. They're choosing to close down their businesses temporarily. And in a lot of cases, they're doing so to protect their P&L. And also to protect their customers and to protect their employees from getting ill in this environment. But if we look at the flip side, we're also seeing a really high volume of clients these days that are really leaning into the problem, and they're getting really, really creative to be able to continue to provide the service that their customers know and love and care about and crave. But also, they want to be able to showcase how they're adapting in these situations so that they can ensure that they're protecting, their employees as well as their customers. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through a couple of these case stories that we have here that we've seen. Hopefully these give you some ideas for ways that you can adapt your business in this really difficult and challenging time, and also show that you can still have a little bit of fun in this time period as well. So to dive in, let's talk about Gregory's Coffee. Gregory's Coffee has been a client of ours for about 2 years now, and they have locations in both New York City and Washington, D.C. And, as news of the virus hit, one of their very first communications that they sent out of the ZenReach platform was ultimately a notification that came directly from their CEO that said, we're in this together and we're doing everything we can in our power to protect you and to protect our employees. They talk about the sanitation modifications that they're making within their locations, closing down of condiment bars, things like that. I've seen with other businesses that they've literally said we're reducing a number of tables within the locations to either 25% or 50% so that we can have some more of that social distancing if we're still able to offer dine-in services. But in addition to that, Gregory's has also done a really good job of also communicating, we're in this together. You are just as important to us as our employees, and we're family owned and operated. And, we are the place that you go to feel good. And we want you to continue to feel like that. So we're here from you. And what's really interesting, and I think I probably can speak for a lot of us, is we've all been getting a ton of these types of emails recently, right? It almost seems like anywhere that you ever gave your email address to is hitting your inbox to talk about these types of things. And so it may kind of go as a surprise, but we're seeing really impressive open rates from these communications. One, when it's your friendly neighborhood business, it's the pizza shop down the street. It's exciting to get an email from them and to know what they're doing, but a 40% open rate is what Gregory's Coffee saw in this particular email. And just to kind of level set for you, they typically see about a 20% open rate. So that's a 2x improvement. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. It really speaks to the community that this type of business is driving through now their digital community. But it's also really great seeing that customers are still very engaged with the brand.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think I get about 50 emails a day about, from vendors or partners talking about COVID virus, and to get a 40% open rate in that environment is really good. And it speaks to kind of how they've addressed the issues directly.
Exactly. Bringing their community online.
Great.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about our next example here. And this is Brick's Wood Fired Pizza, another client that's been with us for a very long time here. They're leveraging our platform in a variety of different ways. And now for a lot of clients, once you get out that initial communication of, hey, we're in this together, these are the steps that we're taking. Now there's an opportunity to now talk about what you are able to offer your customers. Depending on the state, the city, the county that you may live in, your regulations may be causing you to change how you typically run your business. But we all know, and I think we all have heard, carry out and curbside service are now really, really popular items, as well as delivery. And with that, you may need to be modifying your store hours. You may also need to modify your menu. You may not be able to offer all the mini side dishes, as well as kind of all the individual menu items that you had previously, but you're now able to kind of tailor and curate your menu based on popular items or your best sellers. And with that, when you make those changes, and then in my conversation with Sydney directly at Bricks, was they did initially see a drop off in sales. And I think we all expect that. But I think the really exciting piece here is as they've gotten communications like this out to their customers, they've actually now seen their sales increase over the last several days and weeks, now that they've kind of shifted to this new normal, if you will. So it's really exciting to see these types of shifts. And another really interesting story about Bricks is they had been working on modifying their actual takeout packaging. They serve wood-fired pizzas, and you want to make sure by the time you get to your kitchen, that pizza is still hot, right? And it still tastes just as good as it would if you were sitting in their actual physical locations. And although they've been talking about this packaging, as soon as coronavirus became a thing that they knew that they were going to have to, address, they fast-tracked their new packaging so that they could improve their customer experience overall. And they got all that out to their locations very, very quickly. So that's just a really good example of showcasing how a business can be really nimble, can be really adaptive to these changing times, and ultimately able to drive that sales increase, day over day, week over week. Email in particular, you can see here, we've got the Bricks extended family. They had over 35% open rate, comparatively to other emails, 17 to 20% open rate. Again, really incredible for performance. It really showcases how we're communicating, engaging content. Customers want to know how they can continue to shop from you. And being able to provide these email communications to your contacts is a really great way of doing so.
I think that's a really good point. With all of the, especially kind of where I live in the Bay Area, the assumption is that all the businesses are closed, right? We're in lockdown. But the truth of the matter is most of them are not. And they do offer, like you said, carry out or curbside. Well, if my assumption is that it's closed, I don't know that you've adapted your service. I don't know that you've adapted your hours. I don't know that you've adapted your menu. And so it's really imperative to keep that communication with your customers ongoing.
Absolutely. And email is just one channel, right? We'll talk about some of the other channels you can be doing this in, but, also keep in mind, if you have a Facebook page, if you have an Instagram account, those are other ways to kind of keep this communication open and ensure that nobody is just assuming that you're not able to run your business right now. I think that the fact of the matter is if you've chosen to keep your doors open, you need to do everything in your power to ensure that you're seeing as much volume as possible from an order standpoint. So you really lean in.
Cool.
All right. So now that you've gotten your communication out to your customers saying, hey, I'm here, come order from me, whether it be, delivery or curbside pickup. Now let's talk about how you can get kind of creative with the offers that you're running to ensure that you're able to, again, convert every possible customer. So our first example here, we've got two. We've got Wing Shack and Buffalo Wild Wings. If you don't love boneless wings, I don't know who you are. But ultimately, these two clients here, they're running social ads. They really are trying to get the message out about, their offerings and what they have available to kind of bring those creature comforts to home. But they're doing so in really interesting ways. One is addressing, hey, need a break from the kitchen. If you're a mom like me, you definitely need a break, not only from the kitchen, but from the dishes in particular, but also being able to offer different types of coupons, whether it be a BOGO or dollars off your purchase. These are different types of things that are really going to incentivize the consumer to actually purchase from you versus somebody else. So it's the awareness, but then it's also the offer. And with this particular client, what's interesting is they went from about 0.5% CTRs, what ZenReach was seeing originally. These particular ads are getting over 1 to 2% CTR.
Amazing.
I mean, that type of lift is absolutely incredible. It really speaks to the times that we're in. A lot more folks are spending time online, on social. But I also want to share with you back in, September 2019. So well before. Did you have a question, John?
I was just going to say, when I see 1 to 2% click-through rates, those are unheard of, right? In my 20 years in advertising, you'd be lucky on the best campaigns to get 1. Yep. Right? Like really lucky to get anywhere close to that. To see above that is amazing. So it's clearly relevant content to the targeted audience.
Exactly. Absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit. When you're thinking about doing media, Forbes back in September of 2019, they published an article about, when recessions hit, this is probably when most advertisers are actually going to pull out of the game because they're going to essentially want to hedge their bets, right? And they refer to the popular adage here of when times are good, you should advertise. When times are bad, you must advertise. And I think that's true. I mean, ultimately, we're dealing with a lot of different factors right now. And when you are an advertiser that is continuing to put your name and your brand into the space, you're essentially up against a very different noise level, if you will, comparatively to maybe a month or two ago. By putting yourself out there, you likely are not having to compete with as many people as you had previously. Right. Additionally, from a consumer perspective, when you see a brand out there that's continuing to advertise, you're essentially notating that, oh my gosh, they're really leaning into this. It kind of shows almost a brand stability, if you will, during some uncertain times. But also, let's face it, right now, the cost of advertising is actually dropping. And it's actually a benefit to to brands to be able to take advantage of this when they can get a better CPC or they can get a better CPE. Ultimately, it's going to help your overall performance. And just to kind of support that, I just wanted to share with you just a quick note about something that happened back in 1990 to 91. There were recession right around that time period. And Pizza Hut and Taco Bell, they actually chose to take advantage of this time period when McDonald's made a decision to actually cut back in its advertising and promotional budget. And during that time period, Pizza Hut saw an increased sales by 61%, and Taco Bell sales grew by 40%. And McDonald's, their sales declined by 28%. So it really goes to show that it's really important to lean in during these time periods. You'll see the profits pay out long term, and it's a really good way to showcase your brand and its availability and its stability during this time frame.
Great.
All right. So now we've got, your different promotions that are out there. You've got all the different offerings, their items, but let's talk about how you can kind of get more creative on the actual menu side of things. I have a family of, 5 total, and ultimately where I used to maybe buy an individual entree for each person in my family, that gets expensive after a while. So what a lot of businesses, and Takaya is a really good example of this, is they're actually modifying their menu to provide packaged family dinners. This way you can still get the same feel of a sit-down family meal where everyone kind of just serves family style, but now you throw them in the freezer and you don't necessarily have to mix it all up to begin with. Separately, some clients are using this to provide meal prep. So that's when you have your prepackaged breakfast, lunch, dinner, and whatever you aren't using, throw in the freezer or you throw in the fridge. And it gives them an opportunity to really kind of try something new that now may speak to a different or potentially wider audience than it had before. We talked a little bit about price fixed menu items. I see, we have a client like Ruth's Chris where they are offering essentially their same great steaks, but in their similar kind of coursed menu of here's course 1, course 2, course 3, one price, you get it all. So it really kind of allows you to have, again, those creature comforts at home without, taking away from the overall experience. The last example that I have here, I find really, really interesting, and it speaks to how adaptive a lot of our businesses are being right now in some very quickly changing and uncertain times. We all know that grocery stores certainly have been challenged with keeping their shelves stocked. But we have some businesses, whether it be because they shuttered their doors or they're limiting now their menu items available, they're actually taking their extra inventory and offering it to their customers to purchase on their own. So whether it be bread, eggs, flour, meat, you name it, they're now selling it. So what it just shows is people are being really creative. They're trying to find anything that they can do to be able to offer things to customers, but also how can they help their community? And I think it really speaks to just the level of creativity we're seeing in the market right now.
Yeah, and I'll just share anecdotally, when the shelter-in-place order was issued in the Bay Area about a week ago, there was a mad rush on the grocery stores, and I was caught in that as well. And when I went there was no bread, there were no eggs, there was no milk, right? And so this would have been a particularly attractive offer for me in that environment. Don't worry, we're okay. The shelves have been stocked again, but for a couple days it was a little rough. So this can have a true appeal if you're in that similar situation.
Exactly. Great. So now let's talk about if you've got a business that has now a digital storefront, not just a brick and mortar storefront. So we've got some businesses, and we've talked about this, we've got some that have shuttered their doors and some that have chosen to stay open. But now as they shift their business, there is an opportunity, if you have this digital storefront, to supplement some of that income with your web presence. So Strike Brewing is a really interesting case story here. They sent out an email to all of their customers essentially saying, help us help our staff. We want to be able to continue to support these individuals, and we want to continue, having our doors open as soon as we are physically able to. Buy our beer online. Now, I'll buy beer online any day of the week, but I think, you're seeing some of this creativity. You're seeing some restrictions getting changed on the consumer side of things to be able to do these initiatives, but also your customers want to help your staff. Your customers, they want to be able to know that when all of this, is past us, that they can still go to their favorite location, their favorite store, and they want to help your staff. And just to speak to how well this is doing, this particular client, not only did they see an amazing open rate at 32% comparatively to their other emails, 10 to 15% on average, but they saw a 9% click-through rate. I mean, that type of click-through rate is almost unheard of for email unless you've got, a buy one, get 3 free type of promotion going on in an email. But what this really speaks to, again, is it's that digital community that you're creating now. Outside of the face-to-face interactions, your consumers want to support you. They really want to be engaged. Sending out this email communication is a great way to do so.
Yeah, and there are a lot of restrictions on delivery of certain types of items like alcohol. I will tell you that the Bay Area just relaxed them. So you can actually order a cocktail online and have it delivered now. Great opportunity to take advantage of whenever we see these types of restrictions being lifted or suspended. Cool.
Great. All right. So, John was talking a little bit earlier about, the grocery stores and how, it can be challenging to get some items. So I want to take a step through a couple of really interesting use cases of how clients have chosen to actually, get creative again with their advertising, but also their promotions. So let's jump into 1-8 Distillery. This is a client that, for their overall options, they are going to offer 15% off when you shop their various products, but then also because they're a distillery, they're going to repurpose their alcohol to be able to offer hand sanitizer. So again, one of those hot commodity items right now that everybody's trying to get wherever you can. They're almost on lockdown mode in the grocery stores now, where you have to pretty much show your birth certificate to be able to get a bottle these days. But ultimately, being able to offer something like that, one, it's memorable. People are definitely going to remember that you are offering hand sanitizer. It gives you an opportunity to get your brand out there again, but also that 15% off is really going to help individuals kind of make that commitment to purchase from your organization.
That's great.
And then we've got a really creative one here, guys. I ran out to the grocery store in a panic because we were running out of toilet paper. And this is a client that really tried to bring some comedy into what is a really tough situation. And we certainly see this, done in a lot of different ways. They did it really, really, really well, really focusing on the free roll of toilet paper, but with any sandwich order. And really, it's all about how you message this right now. If you send an email, you're going to get at least a 20% open rate. If you're doing it on social, an ad like this on social is going to do really, really well for you. I mean, with We've Got Your Backside, you should see very, very good click-through rates, but also take a look towards the bottom. Order on the Ike's app. Your app, if you have, is a really great loyalty community that you have every opportunity in front of you to be able to market to those loyal customers. Whether it's people that are already on your app or driving consumers to your app that have not yet embraced it, it's a really great way to continue to build that community. But just remember, advertising is supposed to be fun. You want to be memorable. At the end of the day, if it's free press, it also can really help business overall to succeed.
Yeah, one thing I'll call out here is I've seen a number of headlines, particularly about this type of bundle package with toilet paper or hand sanitizer that has gone way beyond the value of the advertising. They've actually gotten a lot of PR value associated with. So articles have been written about it, but it started with getting the word out to the consumer originally. And so this was like, this is one example that has been overwhelmingly successful for a number of clients.
Absolutely.
Cool.
All right. And then lastly, I think it's really important in times like this, if you have an opportunity to partner with somebody local, an organization, any type of philanthropic opportunity that you have to be able to help others, is a really great way, again, to get your message out, but to also allow consumers to have an opportunity to also support those additional partnerships. So, this is a great example of clients, either seafood, partnering up with the Louisiana hospitality workers. Everybody is looking for ways to help. Not everybody can in a very easy way. So being able to do so, it gets you kind of that opportunity to not only get, the items that you love, but also to support those that you do want to help as well.
Yeah, and great. And this is one that, you like the chicken wings, I'll take the shrimp po' boy, and we'll help others along the way.
Exactly. Great.
Cool. Yeah, just really briefly, to summarize, one of the most important takeaways we can have here is if you're open for business in any shape or format, make sure your consumers know, right? Email is a great way to get out there, as Kelly suggested, putting out social posts, but also advertise if you can. advertising has done extremely well. We've seen some of the lowest cost of inventory, some of the highest click-through rates of performance in the last week and a half. And if you can take advantage of it, please do so, because there can be some really, really good results right now.
Mhm.
Talked about considering new service offerings, new product bundles, adapting what you've done to really be relevant to the community at large. And now is the time to communicate. And the communications really have to be online. As Kelly said, your engagement now on the social channels is through the roof because people are more at home. So if you want to communicate with the consumers, that's where they are, right? And at some point, I want to just remind everybody, this will be over, right? It's going to be a difficult time, but it's not going to last forever. And your consumers will remember those that were engaged with them through this time frame and those that had helped them through this time frame. And then lastly, I just want to say we're here to help. If there's anything that we can do to help you and your business, please do not hesitate to reach out. We've got expanded customer service offerings to help you out. I'm here as well. And with that, we just want to say we're here to help. Mike, we're going to open it up for questions.
Yeah. That was great, you guys. Some really, some good comments and some good questions coming in through the session. I think the chat's visible to everybody in the audience, but
not me, because I'm presenting.
but not to you. Shanti Restaurant commenting that they've had open rates as high as 33%, loyal guests coming by just to leave a tip for the staff. I think that's a great example of the kind of behavior that I'm seeing in the local community as people go out of their way to support local businesses that they really like. There's some good questions here. We said we were going to keep this to 30 minutes. Hopefully most of you can hang with us for just a few more minutes while we try and get through some of these questions. If we're not able to take a question live, we can respond to you personally. As John said, we're certainly interested in having conversations and sharing what we know and learning what we can from your experience as well. Kelly, let me direct this first question to you. It's about open rates, suggesting that a lot of those successful emails you were talking about, the content and the subject line probably had a pretty big impact, as well as just the general level of engagement out there right now. But can you comment just a little bit about best practices you've seen when it comes specifically to subject line and what seems to drive engagement and open rates?
Sure, absolutely. And I think it's a little bit, again, counterintuitive to what you would expect. 2 months ago, when we talk about subject lines, it's usually about how can you make the big impact with as little text as possible. Utilize things like emojis and, different types of, buzzwords, if you will. What's really interesting is, Gregory's in particular, their subject line was message from Greg. It was simple. It was straightforward. It was also, there's a level of that, again, personalization. It's coming directly from the man in charge of it all, right? So I wouldn't get too held up on what is my subject line that's going to drive the best open rate. It's more of how can I just let my consumers know as quickly as possible, as easily as possible, we're here for you and we're in this together.
Yeah, that personal touch is really, I think, what's key right now is everyone understands this is a tough time, and just communicating that we're here or we're open in many ways is going to resonate the best.
Absolutely. And just to add one more thing there is, I think one of the things I've heard from clients is the ones that are really leaning in and they're getting creative. It's because really that driving force is coming from their leadership level. They're leaning in and they're saying, guys, we're going to take this day by day. We're going to be really nimble, really quick to make changes. And with that, there's a level of vulnerability that you need to have at that leadership level as well. So don't be afraid to kind of put that in your emails to say, yep, these are unknown times. Nobody has the answer. Nobody has a crystal ball to say what's going to be out there, but we're in this together. We're going to hold hands through it and we'll see you on the other side.
I think that's a great point, Kelly, and kind of echoing a point that you made, talking about why people who are able to maintain some level of communication with their customers through these downturns come out looking better. I think a big part of that is showing confidence and leadership through these kinds of uncertain times. John, let me direct this one to you because it's asking about pricing. In an email you sent last week, we made customers aware that we have matching funds available to customers who continue their performance advertising programs. This person is asking if we'd be willing to reduce minimums for clients that want to advertise now. Obviously, a lot of people working with strained budgets right now, so it seems like a relevant question.
Yeah, so the easy answer is yes. So for those of you who are not familiar, when you advertise on ZenReach, we do have a minimum purchase amount. Basically, that was in place to do one of two things. One, to ensure that you're getting your message out to your visitors in a frequency level that's going to actually have an impact. You know, putting one ad in front of one consumer over 30 days doesn't have the same impact as putting 5 or 6, right? So you got to have a little bit of frequency. And two, in order for us to see an impact on in-store traffic, we needed to get to certain statistically significant relevance by location. So that's why we had minimums in place. Given that we're probably in many cases not going to be operating towards in-store traffic level as the outcome, I do think we can have more flexibility on the minimum. So feel free to reach out and talk about like what kind of package we can put together for you.
That's great. Thanks, John. We're stretching things a little bit, but there are lots more to get to, but two I think are particularly good. So let's try and get to them. Obviously, our customer base reflects largely, restaurants and cafes and bars and nightclubs, eating and drinking kinds of places. But we do work with a lot of retailers as well. One of the attendees is asking for us to talk specifically about programs and examples we've seen from, non-eating and drinking places. What have we seen successful, more general retailers doing as this has taken hold?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll touch on it really briefly now, but I really want to spend another webinar on this one because this one was really devoted to food and beverage. Really briefly, as Kelly mentioned, pointing to your web store is going to be a really huge benefit right now. We can do that really well. We've got the intelligence about who has visited your store the last 30 days. If it's still open, we can certainly continue to do that. If it's not, just targeting those that have already walked in is going to be a great audience sector to go after. We'll share some more examples in another webinar, and we'll publish that as well. So more to come on that front. We don't have examples for you today to share, but we'll make sure to take that as an action item. Thank you.
And John, if I can just add in here real quick,
Yep.
Certainly if you have a retail brick and mortar presence and you have that web store presence, let's make sure we're also having conversations around updating what our conversion metric is. What are the KPIs that we're measuring towards? In our business, walkthrough rate has been ultimately our key deciding factor when it comes to metrics. And so what we're actually doing is we're modifying to focus more on CPCs, CTRs. If we can place the website pixel, we want to be able to do so. So now we're focused now on a different KPI. And just anecdotally, I have a close friend who actually is managing a warehouse for Amazon right now in the Denver area, and they're hiring 600 people right now. So retail, it's changing its look, it's changing its feel, but it's not slowing down. So certainly, we have to get creative. Gift cards, being able to ship things, kind of taking that in-store experience online as best you can.
Yeah, and Kelly mentioned something, the website pixel. We haven't broadly announced this yet, but we're in beta test with a number of clients. We'll speak more about that in the next webinar. I think the next webinar, one of the next webinars, and we'll also roll out specifically what that looks like for you.
There's one more I'd like to get to before we wrap up, you guys, because I think it's future, it's forward facing and hopeful. It's from someone who operates a nightlife establishment in New York. They, as a result of closures in New York, are closed down for now. And so they're asking what can they do to re-engage customers and ramp back up as quickly as possible when life starts to return to normal.
Yeah, I think, we don't know when life will return to normal, but we know it will. Okay, so that's the good news, right? Secondly, the client base that you have, like the customers that you have already today, you want to make sure that you're not completely disengaging from them during this time frame. You want to make sure to let them know, hey, by the way, we're all in this together, coming soon. And then when you're ready to open the doors and when kind of the time comes, one of the best practices you can have is making sure that all of your recent customers know about your opening, right? My suggestion is to be aggressive at that time frame. Really kind of lean in and invest to let them know, here's our kickoff. Here's when we're going to be opening again. And if you're familiar with the ZenReach platform, you'll know that there are people that come to your establishment that you already have contact information on and can email. You'll also know that there are people that come to your establishment that you don't have contact information on, but that ZenReach knows them. And so while we don't give you kind of personal information about them because they haven't given us the permission, you can't advertise in front of them. And so you can put that messaging in front of these consumers as well. And so my strong recommendation is when that time comes that you really lean in and put together, work with your account manager, for example, to put together a plan that says, look, here's how I want to address this audience segment, and go and be aggressive at that time frame. That's when people, you know, there's going to be a lot of pent up desire to go out when these things come out, and take advantage of that.
You'd think I'd be more nimble with that mute button by now. Thanks, John. So, hey, listen, I appreciate everybody's really hung in. The numbers in the attendee box have barely declined, but I feel like I knew we promised 30 minutes. I wanted everybody to get on with the rest of the day. We have lots to do. But on the way out, just want to let everyone know that we are going to regroup every week, Tuesday, 10 o'clock Pacific. We have already lined up a couple of panelists for next week, including Dan Bamick, who is the CEO at Dreambox Creations. Dreambox works, they're a digital agency that works almost exclusively with restaurants and other retail businesses. Dan is a super experienced, savvy, and creative guy who I know is going to have a lot of good ideas and suggestions for how to market your retail business during this kind of crazy time that we're in. We will be sharing a recording as a follow-up. So thank you everyone for joining. We encourage you to share that around, tell your friends, and we'll look forward to continuing the conversation when we see you all next week. Thanks very much for joining.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. We're here to help. Thanks, everyone.